good morning. Hope you're doing well. It is a wonderful morning. A little cloudy today, but it's Roberta here with another car conversation. Last time I joined you, I was telling you a little bit about me, and then I was like, I had to keep talking. Like, I had to kind of come back and tell you what's on my mind and what's going on. But what I want to dive a little deeper into kind of how I got here, a little bit more about my relationship history, and then, man, what comes to mind is that idea of trauma and how trauma in your relationships, trauma in your life can still linger in your present. And I didn't even realize it. So, yeah, let's go back to the beginning. I was married in 2014, and, I knew it in my gut then that this wasn't the right decision for me. And it's funny that my ex, noticed that as we were chatting. He's like, when we were saying our vows, you hesitated. And I was like, no, I didn't. And it's true. And I don't know why I couldn't be honest. Well, I know I couldn't be honest with him at the time. But even before that day, when we got married in our pastor's office, I was like, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. My aunt asked me during the time I was separated, she said, what happened? What happened, basically? Thinking that some one moment or some one thing during the course of my marriage was the reason that I was no longer married. And I actually paused and looked at her and said, oh, nothing happened. I just should never have gotten married. What? And I know that was definitely a shock for her, the idea that I would say I never should have gotten married. And let's start with the fact that I personally didn't do my due diligence. And in that, I would say I was kind of laissez-faire, like, oh, this is fun. I'm having a good time. I enjoyed spending time. We had a lot of fun. We would laugh. We would enjoy each other's company. So it wasn't that I didn't like this man. I did. And I grew to love him. So let's not say he was a bad person, but I was more enjoying the moment and just letting one thing go to the next. I would say that the biggest thing that I realized for myself is I didn't, what's the word? You know the phrase, when people show you who they are, believe them? That part, right? Like, he showed me a lot of different values and behaviors and things like that I didn't believe, or I minimized. Let me go a little further. He's not a bad person, but the values that he held or holds do not match with the values that I hold. So you can have your own value system, but you have to really make sure that between you and your partner, they make sense together. And there were certain things I was like, oh, I probably wouldn't do that. But for fear of, like, not wanting to irritate somebody, or, oh, we're too new and I don't want to, like, be on their business, I let it slide, right? So I just kind of was like, oh, okay, cool. Not a good idea, because those things percolate back up and they show up again later on down the line. And for me specifically, they showed up in my marriage, and then it just didn't work. And at that point, there's so much at stake. And so when those values don't align, they have consequences. So there were things I saw, and I was like, it's fine. Or, he got irritated. So I was like, oh, that's cute. He'll blow off steam. And the reality was, blowing off steam and all that sort of stuff is cute, but when it manifests in someone being angry, it's not okay, right? So I did it I minimized the behaviors I saw. I minimized the things that I saw instead of really acknowledging them to be true and really thinking about what the implications were of how that behavior can impact a long-term relationship or a marriage. So that was on me. And then thirdly, I was insecure. I was definitely insecure. I was at a place in my life where, my mindset around who I was and how valuable I was and how worthy I was, it was low, so low. I didn't think I was pretty. I didn't think anyone wanted to date me. Actually, someone once told me the guys who are interested in you aren't going to be interested in me, or the guys who are interested in me wouldn't be interested in you, and made me feel really small. And, I was tomboyish and didn't have my sense of style just yet. So I was just definitely in a very timid, uncomfortable space for myself. So fast forward to the day that I was about to leave Florida and move with a new job, and he says to me, "What if we got married?" My behind was like, "Sure, why not?" What? Who says sure, why not? Me. And I realized that I accepted that sort of notion of getting married as that, let me go back to that laissez-faire, just rolling through it sort of thing. Just roll through it versus saying, is this really what I want? Is this the best thing for my life? I didn't really ask those questions. I was just rolling through with, hey, this guy likes me and he wants to marry me. And my insecurity said, I'm not dating now, so I guess this is a good option. This really isn't the right way to jump into a marriage, right? But lesson learned. So these are sort of things where I would say, like, I just shouldn't have married him to begin with. Not because, like I said, not because he was a terrible person. I just didn't do my due diligence. I ignored red flags, and I was insecure. So, what next? I get into this marriage. Life happens, and just quite honestly, there was just, it's just hard. It just became hard. The arguments became hard. The anger became hard to manage. The walking on eggshells just became more and more prevalent. And there were, it's so hard to say. It's just so hard to say. And maybe because as I'm saying this right now, I'm being honest, I'm thinking, what if he sees this video and gets mad at me? That's the PTSD that still exists, right? Like, what if he sees this and gets mad at me? And I'm choking up a little bit now because it really should not matter. It really should not matter. But if I'm being honest, that's what's going on in my head as I'm thinking, what do I say to you next? But the reality was, there was abuse. Verbal abuse that just started. And someone called it once, like, "Oh, that just sounds so verbally abusive." And I'm like, no, it's not. And this is like in my first couple of years of marriage. Like, no, it's not. I refused to acknowledge it. I can name it now, and that's going to be a whole nother conversation. I can name it now, but it's still hard to name. And the trauma, the PTSD of him lingering in the back of my mind, even to this day, years later, to say, don't say anything that's going to make him look bad. It's hard, y'all. And I don't know what I think the consequences are going to be, or why I care if there are consequences, or why maybe part of me is like, I don't get it because I don't want him to look bad. But it's my truth that there were various forms of abuse, mostly verbal and emotional, throughout my marriage. But the last straw was when it became physical. I started finding that throughout the course of that time, I would hear messages that would make me feel like, from him, and make me feel like he told me I was manipulative, that I wasn't making good decisions because I didn't know better, that my clothes were too short, too tight, that I was trying to dress a certain way to entice men, and he kept saying those things in various forms, or would tug at my clothes, or you're walking out the house with that, just all these little barbs. Fast forward, I'd go clothes shopping and I'm trying on dresses, and I'm like, this thing is too short. And the person I was shopping with was like, no, that looks right. What do you mean? And the next one's like, oh, it's too tight. This was just a couple months ago, y'all. Years after my separation. In the back of my mind, I have now absorbed the message that certain clothes are too short and certain clothes are too tight, and thus I must adjust. And I haven't been with my ex for years. And yet, years later, those messages are still in my psyche where I believe them. The trauma of believing something that is so much in the undercurrent of your mindset that you don't even realize it until you hear yourself say it out loud. Y'all, it's hard to overcome. It's really hard to overcome some of those undercurrents of messages. But what I found is that when I say it out loud, when I acknowledge out loud that I'm still dealing with that trauma of old messages, it makes it easier to attack it. It makes it easier to change it. And to say, you know what? I am going to buy this dress because I like it and I think it looks good on me. And no, I don't think it's too short. Or, and just really feeling confident in myself and in my body and how I show up. So there's kind of the intro to my reflection as to how did I get married, then end up getting divorced. I should have gotten married. I should have just gone on my merry little way. But I will tell you what, I have learned so much about myself, and I pray that in this new season I have been able to learn lessons and apply them properly in my new life, apply them in my dating pursuit, and I can't wait to tell y'all what it's been like to date in this this day and age. Woo, girl! I'm pretty sure we'll have some similar stories. But anyway, I appreciate y'all just listening in, hearing a little bit more about my journey here. And I think you're going to start to see some of the things I went through and how I am going to push through and manifest into a thriving life for myself, because I deserve nothing less. And I am amazing. All right, guys. I hope you have a wonderful day and that all is well. Bye.